All right, everybody. In this video, we're going to review how to take the template demo Excel files, link them up to SQL Server, link Plan together to those databases, kind of get everything set up so you can use this file. All right. So the first thing, let's download the file set. So I'm going to go to the website, the files are, and we'll download the zip file. All right, files are downloaded. Here we are. Let's extract those files. Okay. So our files are extracted, and again, just to kind of review this a little bit, we've got a mappings file, we've got a picture that shows the data connection, which you can take a look at, the scenarios file, which is the file that contains the data for Plan Together. Not necessarily needed, but we're going to load it in. I'm going to show you how to do that. The backup of the database, show you how to restore that, and the Excel file. All right, so let's start with creating an instance Plan Together. So let's make our new instance. Just going to pick the latest version here. Template demo, we'll call it new scenario. Right, so our new instance has been created and it's starting up. All right, our instance has started. And now since this is a new instance, it's going to load up with its own. We're going to actually go to the instance here. I'll show you how to find it. It's going to load up with its own scenario file and mappings file. So easiest way to get here is the program data folder. Plan Together. And here's our new instance. And in here, you're going to find an integration file folder, which contains our mappings file. And you're also going to see in the system data scenario folder, actually, it's going to be blank. It hasn't loaded anything up yet. Actually, when we stop our instance, it's going to save something. So what we're going to do is just to kind of get this set up with the original files. This started up with a blank slate. We're going to stop this instance. And notice it wrote out the scenario file when I stopped that. So what we're going to do is delete that one. And we're going to copy and paste the one that we downloaded in there. So that's the template data for Plan Together. Just if you can load it up and look at it, but you can always just create it from scratch. It's fine. And then we step back here a couple levels back to the instance name folder, integration files. There's our mappings file. We're going to delete that one. And we're going to load in the one that came with our files. Okay. Now it's important that you stop the instance before you do this, because when Plan Together shuts down, it overwrites these areas with what's in its system. So you always want to stop the instance first. But after that, we can start it back up. Okay, start it up. So let's log into it just to say that we did. Great, and so because we stopped the instance and loaded our scenario file and our mappings file in, you're actually going to see jobs in here. You're going to see the data from just the starting point that basically syncs up with the Excel file that we have. So if you're seeing data on the Gantt like this and jobs like this in your system, then you've done everything correctly. All right. So I'm just going to minimize this for now. Now the next part here, what we want to do is we want to link this instance. If I double click on it, we want to link it to the database, to the SQL database where we can pull data in from. Okay, so let's go set up the SQL database, then we'll configure it to pull from it. So let's go to SQL. Now I've got my backup file here in my downloads. We're just going to use that file. So we'll come to databases in Management Studio. I'm going to restore a database. We are going to pick the file. And we're going to go to the downloads folder. And there's our backup file. Okay. And we're just going to call it template demo. You can change the name of it if you want. And hit OK. Okay. So our database has been restored, template demo. And let's link Planet Together up to this. So the way we do this, pretty easy. Come back to your instance, your server name, whatever your server name is, database name, in this case, template demo, your login. Now you can set up, if you have a local SQL Server login, you can always log in with it here. Otherwise, I believe let's just see here, on the Services tab, you can log in the interface service as a window user using the username and password here. Okay. For this example, though, I have a user. It's the easiest way to go. Okay. So now on top of that, I'm just going to jump back to SQL for a second. Inside the database, there's some stored procedures. Okay. And what happens is there's 4 stored procedures. They kind of go in this order. Get Excel data runs first. Then we build the Planet Together tables. Within the Planet Together tables, it calls this other stored procedure that does some looping and generates work orders, which we'll talk about in a second. But what I did was I provided a stored procedure called PT import procedures. If I just take a look at this quickly. What it does is it runs the get Excel data and the build PT tables, and it accepts a file path that we're going to send it. Okay, so best thing to do here is just to tell Planet Together to call this stored procedure when it runs an import. So what we're going to do is copy the name of this procedure, come back to the instance manager. What we want to do is say run SQL before import. And notice down here it's got the SQL run before import. So we can execute this procedure. And we want to pass it that parameter, file path equals. And the file path here is the path to our Excel template, which is here. Okay. So I'm going to copy that path, paste it in there. And save that. So now when I'm inside Planet Together, and we'll just run a quick test here. So let's go back to Planet Together. So first of all, when I run an import in Planet Together right now, not a lot should change. Let's see if that's the key. It should be pulling off the template data file, which let's just open quick, just to make sure we see what's in there. But resources, right? Process, mix, pack, CNC, QA, finish, items, sub, raw, that sort of thing. So it's the same thing that we see in here. If I run refresh right now, what we're going to see is Planet Together is going to start refreshing the data. It's going to pull the Excel file. It's going to run the stored procedures. It's going to import that whatever data's changed. All right. Presumably nothing's changed this time. Okay, so nothing moved on the Gantt. Nothing's really changed. Now, let's just make sure that we've got this linked up correctly. So let's go back to our file. And you'll see kind of how to use this spreadsheet in the next video. But let's just run a quick test here. Let's add a resource to Planet Together. So let's just add enable editing. Let's a resource called test. Work center name called test. capability called test. That's all we really need to add in there. So let's save this file. I'll close it, and I'll rerun refresh. Our refresh has started. And there we go. A new resource was created. All right, so we know that our file is now linked up to SQL. SQL's doing data, plan together, call the SQL, run the procedure, right? It's doing everything that we need it to do. So really, that's how you link up the spreadsheet. So this next part, I just want to explain a little bit about how Plan It Together, or how I designed this database and kind of how it functions, and if you need to modify it, how you can do that. So we'll just kind of run through this quickly. The first procedure, if we take a look at it, all it's doing, first of all, it actually gives you some very useful information on if you don't know how to have SQL talk to Excel, you can follow these steps here, and it will help you do that. All right. So definitely recommend following these steps and getting your SQL Server ready to import from Excel if you haven't. You're going to need to do that. So second part here is what it's doing is it's just going through each tab of that file. And I'll open it. Notice metadata, resources, resource product rules. Right? Metadata, resources, resource product rules. Right? It goes through every table and essentially does a direct copy. Pulls everything out of that table into a table inside SQL. Okay? And you'll notice here, if I open up my tables, if I look at resources, for example, it builds a table called data resources. All right? If I come down to routings, there's a data routings table. So that's where you see your source data files. All right? So another way to get data into Plan It Together without using Excel in this case would be to essentially, let's see, if I go to my resources table, I could technically edit this table in SQL Server, and I could call this test 2. Okay, so I could technically do that, edit the source data. I would have to still run this build PT tables file. So you could set Plan It Together up to do that. And now, if I ran import and Plan It Together, I'd have to actually turn off the, just an aside here, I'd have to turn the SQL off because that's calling my main procedure. Actually, let's turn that off and save it. So remember, I edited the local file here. If I refresh my data, it's going to pull in my test 2. All right. So I hope that made a little bit of sense. I'm just going to set everything back up the way we had it quickly. But, you can have Plan It Together call whatever you want here. And let's go back here. And we'll just, I think this is fine. So, like I said, you've got the first store procedure just pulls data directly in. Okay, I'm going to close that down. Let's look at our second store procedure, the build PT tables. This is the one if you need Plan It Together to do something different, or sorry, if you need the integration to do something different than it's already doing, you can come in here and modify this. So what this does is it essentially builds the tables that Plan It Together links to, okay? So for example, I'm building a table called PT resources here, and I'll just select this so you can see and run it so you can see what the query does. So this query builds a table that looks like this, okay? And now, just to kind of bring this full circle, when I go into Plan It Together, remember that mappings file we loaded in? Well, if I come back to settings here on the back end, and we look at the import mappings area, and I go to my resource mappings, I'll see that it's pointed at the PT resources table inside SQL, okay? Now I can preview this data by clicking this button. This is essentially the same query, that I just ran in SQL and showed you. And all this thing does is it lets me map fields from the table I create in SQL over to the field names in Plan It Together. So you notice there's a lot of fields, like just looking at resource, for example, that I'm not mapping, okay? So this Excel template doesn't cover everything, right? But it covers enough to give a demo, and you can always add data to it, okay? So let's come back to SQL. All right, so like I said, this procedure basically runs through and creates resources, items, everything that begins with a PT underscore. So if I come back to our table listing, there's a bunch of tables, okay? And so that's kind of how that works. Now, there's one nuance, kind of how Plan It Together imports routings and jobs, and that sort of thing. And the way that works is Plan It Together imports them all on the same record, okay? And what do I mean by that? I mean that your standard routing files, like your PT routing header, these are your templates or your recipes or your standards, right? It's your item and how it's made, how many operation steps, that sort of thing. And so my routing header gets combined with my work order header, okay? So I'm going to have a work order header. All right, and some other headers that we can explain in a second. But at the end of the day, what Plan It Together does is, or what I do, is I build a set of tables that combines all of these. So if I go to PT all headers, it just unions all the header tables together, all right? And you'll notice when I run this that my template routings have a categorization of template true, and my work order routings all of a categorization or the template is false, right? Not a template. So we tell Plan It Together what's a template or what's not a template in the header files, okay? And you'll get kind of used to that. So it's pretty straightforward in this procedure. The one part that is that's kind of new to this version of the Excel import is the ability to have the integration generate work orders for you. And you can kind of see that here. I'll talk about it a little bit in the next video that you'll see, but there's a field here called pre-create work orders, and it's on the sales order. So essentially, just to kind of reiterate, you can send standard routings and bombs into Plan It Together, and on the sales order or the demand, you could say, hey, you know what? Just have the SQL loop kind of create work orders for me. And so this makes giving demos really easy because I don't have to go in to the work order tables here and just create a bunch of work orders. I can just have SQL do it for me, okay? Now, if your customer gives you a bunch of work order data and you want to display that and Plan It Together, you can feel free to enter your own work orders in here. I just find it very easy to kind of check this box to say, yep, go pre-create the work orders for me, and it'll do that, okay? So let's kind of show an example of this. I'm going to play around with this a little bit, all right? So let's add, let's see, what are we doing here? Let's go, I'm just going to turn these off for now, okay? So the only thing I've got on is Finish Good 1. It's going to pre-create the work orders for Finish Good 1. And actually, I'm just going to delete these other ones. I guess we can leave them. It's not going to hurt anything. So we're going to pre-create for this Finish Good order here. All right. Let's save the file. I'm just going to run the. I am going to run these manually here. Now it's going to ask me for my file path. So I'm going to pull the new data in. Actually, you know what? We can do this really simply. I'm going to come to my data files. I'll edit my sales order data. And I'm just going to stick nulls in here. Just like the rest. Okay. And so just for this first one, we're going to create the work orders. Okay. So right now what I want to do is I want to build my Plan It Together tables just because I changed some of that source data. Okay, it runs pretty quickly. Now, what we're going to see is in my work order generated tables now, we're going to actually see data related to what I did there. And we kind of look at it, we're going to see, oh, look at this. It generated 2 work orders, one for the finished good, one for the intermediate. If we look at the BOMs, it generated the BOM levels. It actually even pegged them. So that's what it does. It generates all that information, unions it together, brings it into plan together. It's just a way to make the import, make the demo process easy for you. And really, that's what that third procedure does. So this procedure picks up off of that sales order and does some looping and goes to the BOMs and essentially creates work orders for any sales orders that you have marked as pre-create work orders. Now, one caveat is that, let's just open this up quick. If I've got this marked as pre-create work order, but I have a work order in here that references that sales order, right? So say I had a work order in here that referenced order 567, something like that had this link on here. The integration sees that and it ignores the fact that you said pre-create them. It's going to use your work order, the information over here instead. So that's just one caveat. Got to be careful about that. But that's about it. So yeah. So that's your walkthrough. You know, and I guess I'll finish it by saying one more thing. You know, it's really easy. I can come over to my Excel file. If I need an extra field on my resources, I can do that. I can just add it. Okay, I can just add it here. I can fill in whatever data I want in that field. I can save this file, okay? And let's run, we'll get our Excel data again. Pass in the file path, of course. Let's see if let's go copy it. This is our file path. Let's run this. There, it's done. So let's go to our data resources table. And there we go. We've got our extra field added in, right? So if you need to bring any other data into this model, it's just very easy to add extra columns onto the data that you already have. Of course, this isn't going to affect everything in the model. You would have to go through the integration and add this field to wherever you wanted it to be, and that sort of thing. But it gives you really the backbone to, first of all, do a great demo, do it quickly, do it easily, set it up easily, make it custom, right? And gives you the flexibility to import customer data, and even use this as kind of like I said, like the backbone, like the starter template for starting an integration to a new ERP system or that sort of thing. So I think you'll find it very useful. I hope you find it easy to use. And of course, if not, let me know. I hope you enjoyed and take care. Thanks.